Saddening as that event remains, we've also seen this week that democracy is resilient in America, our closest ally and neighbor. Violence has no place in our societies, and extremists will not succeed in overruling the will of the people. As Canadians, I think we've been all reflecting on our own country, something I spoke with the premiers about last night, about the fact that democracy is not automatic. It takes work every day. About what a real accomplishment it is to maintain a political system in which the losing side gracefully concedes and in which rival political parties between elections work together for the common good. We have this in Canada because Canadians make it possible. Canadians expect their political leaders to protect our precious democracy by how we conduct ourselves. We have seen this manifest in unanimous consent in our Parliament for our main COVID fighting measures at a time when the government holds a minority of seats. We see it in the cooperation between the federal government and provincial and territorial governments, regardless of political stripe. Canadians expect debate. Debate in service of all Canadians, debate that is grounded in a shared acceptance of the facts. In a diverse country, there will always be diverse perspectives, and it is through respect for those differences that we create a stronger Canada. Canadian democracy didn't happen by accident, and it won't continue without work. We must always work to secure our democracy and not give comfort to those who promote things that are not true or give space for hatred or extremism.
Yesterday, during our 24th meeting of the ministers of the provinces and territories, we talked about what happened in the U.S. this week. We were all shocked to see extremists incited by the president to act with such violence in the capital of Washington. It reminded us that we cannot take our democracy for granted. Canada's democracy didn't happen by chance, and it will take effort to continue. Canadians expect honest debate that serve all Canadians. Debates, we all have to have a shared acceptance of facts. We all have to protect our democracy and promote democracy and avoid the space that is allowed for hatred and extremism. We also discussed long-term care homes with premiers, measures for travelers, testing and vaccines. Our government is working on vaccines tirelessly. We have been doing so for months. The distribution process has involved doses, particularly for Pfizer's vaccine, is a complex challenge. But thanks to everyone's efforts, we started distributing doses earlier than expected as of December 21st. We're doing everything we can to obtain as much vaccines as possible and as quickly as possible. Major General Fortin will provide detailed figures today. In December, we distributed roughly 500,000 of doses of this vaccine across the country, and to more than a large number of doses in Quebec. In January, there'll be 1.4 million doses of Pfizer's and Moderna's vaccines that will be distributed in Quebec. And we're trying to do so as quickly as possible. People are dying, hospitals are overflowing, and we don't want to see this. This is a crisis, and Canadians want results. I understand, and I promise that we will work tirelessly. We're continuing to cooperate with all levels of government. We have a large team. More than ever, it's the time to gather our forces to fight COVID-19 once and for all.
Yesterday, at our 24th First Ministers meeting, the Premiers and I discussed the vaccine rollout across the country. We agreed that it is vital that we work together as Team Canada to get vaccines delivered, distributed and administered as quickly and efficiently as possible. The premiers and I also discussed ways to combat misinformation. Vaccines are safe and effective, and everyone should be doing their part by getting vaccinated once it's their turn. This week, over 124,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine were delivered to 68 sites across the country. Over 208 Pfizer doses will be delivered weekly for the rest of January. On Moderna, by the end of next week, over 171,000 doses will be delivered to the provinces and territories. We're on track to deliver approximately 1.3 million doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines by the end of January. Quantities of both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine will scale up in February. Remember that Canada has the most vaccines secured per capita in the world, which means that by September, we will have enough vaccines for every Canadian who wants one. Our top priority remains keeping you and your family safe. I know things are tough right now. Frankly, it's frightening to see cases rise at home and around the world day after day. But you're not in this alone. We continue to be there for you. We're continuing to send millions of pieces of PPE to protect healthcare workers and communities. We will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. For you, for family, for your communities, we will have your backs. And on that note, I can also confirm that yesterday, the Canadian Armed Forces approved a request for support to the Fort Albany First Nation in Ontario as they deal with the COVID-19 outbreak. The Canadian Rangers will be activated on the ground until at least January 11th. By working together, we will get through this.
As many provinces have announced stricter measures to limit the spread of COVID-19, many people are concerned about what this means for their jobs and for their families. Our government is going to continue to be there for you. This morning, we learned that the Canadian economy lost 63,000 jobs in December, most of which were related to the service industry. Since the beginning of this pandemic, our government acted quickly to support our economy and to directly support Canadians. You can be assured that we're doing everything we can to help you to get through these tough times.
Measures like the wage subsidy are making a real difference for workers and businesses who need it. For a promising new company like StrongPoint in Toronto, the wage subsidy helped keep employees on the payroll when things got tough in the spring. It was a lifeline for them. The same goes for staff at the communication firm, the Humphrey Group. The wage subsidy helped them retain their hardworking employees and get ready for recovery. It's not good news for anyone if local businesses have to close shop for good because of this global crisis. In the second wave, this is not the time to take the foot off the gas. It's the time to keep doing everything we need to ensure that our economy stays resilient and that workers and families can weather this storm. Mercredi,
on Wednesday, Quebec announced a prolongation of its lockdown. It's important for you to know that the federal government is there to support the provinces as they must take difficult decisions. For Quebecers and for all Canadians, measures are in place to help you. There's the wage subsidy that is there for workers and small businesses. For those in need, we changed EI to support a larger number of people. We won't let you down. As I said earlier, vaccines are continuing to be delivered, and we have reason to be optimistic. But for the time being, we have to follow public health directives. Stay at home, avoid gatherings, and use the free COVID alert app. Those who decide to travel travel and do not follow public health advice must quarantine for 2 weeks when they come back to Canada. If this quarantine is not respected, there will be legal consequences which are very severe. Since yesterday, it is now obligatory for travelers to have a negative COVID-19 test before they can take a return flight to Canada. Compared to other countries, our border measures are amongst the strictest in the world.
Now, more than ever, it is crucial that you keep doing your part to protect yourself, to help our healthcare workers, and to save lives. Wear your mask, avoid gatherings, and use the COVID Alert app. The app has now been updated to work on older models of iPhones, such as the iPhone 5, 6, and 6 Plus. Almost 6 million people have downloaded the app. And of course, the more Canadians use it, the more powerful this tool becomes. So keep it up, and remember, we're all in this together. This morning, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that today marks the 1-year anniversary of the Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 tragedy. As a country, we remember all those we lost, and we mourn with their families and friends. Of the victims aboard that flight, 138 of them were on their way to Canada. To the family members and friends who had planned to pick their loved ones up at the airport, to everyone who was looking forward to seeing your beloved partner, child, or parent, I cannot imagine your pain. Know that you are in our thoughts today. This kind of unthinkable tragedy must never happen again. That's why, over the past year, our government developed the Safer Skies Initiative and worked with partners around the world to help keep civilian aircraft away from dangerous conflict zones. Today, on the first National Day of Remembrance for victims of air disasters, we remember and honor all those we lost. The victims of PS 752, just like the victims of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, Air India Flight 182, and other air disasters, will never be forgotten. We will be there for each other through tough times. It's what Canadians do. Whether it's grieving for elders we lost in long-term care homes, whether it's mourning together for victims of international tragedies, or whether it's standing with courageous young people like Isabella Kulak, a member of Cote First Nation, Saskatchewan, who wore her ribbon skirt to school to celebrate her culture last month. Let's remember who we are, people who are there for each other. In tough times, we pull together. We look out for each other. We support each other. It's what Canadians have learned to do through generations of dealing with winter, dealing with vast spaces, being there for each other, being there for our neighbors. We need to make it through this winter now. We need to pull together while staying apart. We need to hang in there. Spring is coming. Summer is coming. It always does. This one will be better if we can pull together right. So stay safe, everyone. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to questions from media. We'll start on the phone. One question, one follow-up. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. Première question.
First question.
La Forêt, TVA Nouvelle.
TVA Nouvelle. Question. Good morning, Prime Minister. This week, we felt that the tone has gone up with the Premier in terms of the national group on long-term care homes and the fact that there was a disagreement in terms of what you announced for Quebec and what vaccines for Quebec and what Quebec did. Did you apologize to the premiers for this? Answer, I think it remains extremely important that we work together, that we watch that everyone's doing what they can to help Canadians to get through this crisis. But what Canadians want to see is there are various leaders and politicians working together to ensure that we're doing everything that is necessary to help people. That's exactly the conversation that we had yesterday evening, whether it's our concerns in terms of our seniors and the desire of many provinces to work together to share their best practices to protect seniors in long-term care homes, or whether it's ensuring that we're sharing all the information in terms of forecasts for vaccine delivery directly to Canadians. Well, we're going to continue to work together, and that's what Canadians expect of us.
One of the things that we've seen throughout this pandemic is the need for different orders of government to work together. And yes, we need to make sure everyone is doing their part, and we'll encourage each other to do the best we very much can. But at the same time, we do have a Team Canada approach that makes sure that we're all working together for Canadians, because that's what Canadians want to see. Whether it's by ensuring that all the information is flowing directly to the provinces as we get it on vaccines from the companies. We've clearly stated the predictable schedule for the month of January, and we'll have more information soon for February and March. Or whether it's how we're sharing best practices across the country on successes in long-term care, which is something that every corner of this country is dealing with. We're going to continue to work together for the benefit of Canadians.
Follow-up question. Do you recognize that there can be a delay between the delivery of the doses of the vaccine and when they get to the provinces? Answer. I think that we're ensuring a better efficacy every day. This is enormous mobilization for vaccinations that is underway. What we've started is a good thing, and it even happened a few weeks earlier than what we were expecting. There were roughly several thousand vaccines delivered in December. That was good news, but obviously it takes time to establish processes to deliver vaccines efficiently and safely. Well, there's always a trial period, and we continue to help provinces so they can step up the pace in an impressive way during this weekend and in coming weeks as well. Thank you. Next question.
Merci. Thank you. Next question, Ryan Talty, National Post. Line open.
Yeah, good morning, sir. I'm wondering if, in your conversation with the premiers last night, if you were able to give them sort of a timetable for how the vaccine deliveries will ramp up. You mentioned just now that they'll ramp up in February, but I think they're probably hoping for some concrete numbers so that they can plan going forward, especially with the requirement that these vaccines receive a second dose within a certain amount of time.
Yes, that's exactly the issue that we're all working together on right now. The need for predictability allows provinces to schedule deliveries, to schedule inoculations, to have that most efficient possible system. That's why we're pleased that we're able to confirm exactly what doses they'll be getting every single week in January, and we're going to be passing along information on the schedule for February and March soon. We need to get it from the companies themselves. It's not the federal government that decides that. And as soon as we get more information from the companies, we will pass that immediately along to provinces so they can plan. We need to make sure we're being as open and transparent and rapid about it so that we can get vaccinations both to the provinces and from the provinces into people's arms as quickly as possible. And on that, we're all working together. Yeah.
I think it's extremely important to have as much clarity as possible in terms of the timetable for delivering vaccines. And that's why we're really happy to be able to provide the specific timetable for January and coming weeks. And as soon as we receive the information from these companies for February and March, we will immediately share it with the provinces to allow them to better plan and get organized, and most importantly, to be able to deliver the vaccine more efficiently and quickly to vulnerable people. And that is what we're working on all together.
A follow-up question, Ryan?
Yeah, sir, I just wanted to ask you, in your opening remarks today, you said that the riots at Capitol Hill on Wednesday were incited by the current president, by President Trump. He has a significant amount of support within his own party. There are congressmen and senators who support him. And of course, he's still president for 13 more days. Do you worry about damaging Canada's relationship with the U.S. by those comments?
I think it's extremely important that we be there to defend democracy and the principles that Canadians and indeed Americans and people around the world hold dear. And recognizing that words have consequences, that choices made by people in power can have direct impact not just on behaviors but on our very institutions is an important thing.
Next question, operator.
Merci. Prochaine question.
Next question. Melanie Marquis from La Presse. Question. Hello, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to go back to what you said in terms of what happened at the Capitol in Washington earlier this week. You said that rioters were incited by the president. How would you define what happened? Was it a coup d'etat? Answer. I think we all saw what the president heard, what he said. We saw the scenes that were horrifying of a violent crowd that wanted to upset democratic institutions in the United States. It reminds us all that the choices we make as politicians and the words we use, how we position ourselves, have a direct consequence, not just on the choices we make as a society, but also the very nature of our institutions. Follow-up question. Yes. Yesterday, as you know, there were extremists such as Proud Boys that were there, and Jagmeet Singh yesterday asked your government to register this group on the list of terrorist organizations. Do you think this will happen? Answer. The decisions in terms of the list of terrorist groups is done in coordination with our security organizations. This is a first for this country since 2019 that we've listed right-wing organizations as terrorist organizations. We have other names we've put on it recently, so we're going to continue to fight carefully against such violent extremism that we see that is growingly worrisome across the world and even here in Canada. We are taking this very seriously as a government, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to fight back against hatred and violence.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Prime Minister, 1,000 more jobs lost at WestJet today, on top of all the other jobs that have been lost in the airline industry. You've been standing in the spot since the spring, saying that you're negotiating with the airlines to try and help them, and yet here we are in January, still no industry-specific package to help the airline industry. When is it coming, and what is the holdup?
We have invested close to $1.5 billion in support for airline companies in this country to support workers with the wage subsidy, with other measures, because we know that the airline industry is extremely hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. People shouldn't be traveling, and that, of course, is a direct challenge for the airline industries to manage through. At the same time, we've made it very clear that we expect people to be reimbursed. We expect regional routes to be protected. We expect certain things from the airline industry, and those discussions about how we're going to make sure that people are protected as we offer supports are continuing.
On vaccines, we're hearing that some countries have been paying a premium to get some of the approved vaccines, with the Pfizer vaccine in particular, Israel paying more than the United States. You've refused to say how much Canada is paying per dose, even though it is the government of Canada's money, and that's not very transparent. and hope you will change your mind and give more information about those contracts. But I'm curious about whether or not Canada has considered paying a premium price to get more vaccine delivered faster, and if not, why not? Because it seems to be penny wise, pound foolish to not spend more on vaccines if we can get them into people's arms quicker.
From last spring onwards, we knew that securing sources of vaccines would be essential to get Canadians through this pandemic. That's why we worked very early with potential vaccine companies, and were among the first to secure contracts with many of them. We have ended up in the enviable position of having the largest array of access to the top vaccine companies around the world for Canadians, and indeed more doses per capita for Canadians than for just about any other country in the world. Of course, we need to make sure we're getting those doses as quickly as possible, and I can assure you that we continue ongoing conversations with the companies about accelerating the schedule of delivery so we can get Canadians vaccinated as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And the Minister of Procurement, Anita Anand, will be at the noon press conference and can answer further questions on this.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Perry with CBC. You've been talking about getting all Canadians, or anyone who wants a vaccine, vaccinated by the fall. Are you still confident about that? And I just want to know, are you sort of basing that on vaccines that have yet to be approved?
We have secured a very strong array of different vaccines, potentially as they move forward. The Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine are approved. The Johnson & Johnson, the AstraZeneca are in the Health Canada rolling evaluation process right now. The experts who are in charge of our vaccine portfolio and indeed the schedule are confident that we are going to be able to vaccinate every Canadian who wants it by September. That will be significant in terms of getting through this pandemic and making sure that next winter looks very different from this one. But indeed, as vaccines roll out, we're hoping for 3 million Canadians to be vaccinated by the end of March. And into the spring, we hope to see many, many more millions of Canadians vaccinated as well. But we hold to September as the date in which every Canadian who wants one will be able to have gotten a vaccine.
En français?
Answer in French.
Nous nous sommes commis à avoir
We're committed
tout le monde
to having all Canadians who wish to have a vaccine have one by September. It'll be important to be able to get to that point. We have many doses under contract with various companies, and experts who are managing our vaccine system are confident that we will get to our objective for September 2021.
And on the events this week in Washington, you've met with Donald Trump, you've spoken with him, you've negotiated with him. I'm wondering if you ever expected Donald Trump's presidency to end this way.
I think throughout the past 4 years, we have learned as a country and indeed as a world that the Trump administration was unpredictable and posed certain challenges, but at the same time, we've been able to work through in a responsible way, defending Canadian interests and moving forward in a way that always makes it very clear what our values are. We were able to renegotiate NAFTA in a way consistent with our values and our approaches, and defend Canadian interests significantly in that area and in many other areas. Obviously, there is going to be much said and written about in the history books over the coming years about this time, but my focus has always been and will always be how to make sure Canadians are best represented, best defended, and best supported as we move through this world. And that's what we've done with this administration and what I'm very much looking forward to doing with President Biden as of a couple of weeks from now.
En français?
Answer in French. I think that Canadians have always expected our government to defend our values, our principles, and most importantly, our interests in terms of the U.S. government, which was hard to predict, and the U.S. government also presented challenges in terms of our relationship. But I'd like to remind you that we were able to negotiate NAFTA in order to defend our values and even create benefits and opportunities for Canadian workers and companies, even under a regime that was somewhat difficult. And we're going to continue to remain focused on Canadian interests in the years to come with the new President Biden when he will take office in a couple of weeks.
Canadian Press, following on that, how concerned are you or were you that President Trump's exhortations on Wednesday would be heard by groups like the Proud Boys and others in Canada? And what concerns did you have about what President Trump was saying about creating potential threats to Canada's national security?
Well, we know that even as we watch with extreme concern everything unfolding in the United States over these past few days, that we are not immune to that in Canada, that we have a responsibility as Canadians to continue to lead with respect, to engage substantially with different points of view, and to never resort to violence as a way of impacting public discourse. That is something that Canadians have recommitted to across the country over these past days, and we will continue to be extremely vigilant to remember that the choices we make as leaders, as politicians, have consequences. What we choose to say, what we choose not to say, how we choose to say it, does have an impact on Canadians, encourages people to do some things, discourages them to do others. We need to be more responsible, all of us, in how we approach civil society and community engagement. And that's something that I think we are all rededicated to after seeing what can happen in the United States and elsewhere. I think it's extremely important to remember that we all have a responsibility as Canadians, but also as leaders, to carefully choose our words, to make the right choices, to bring people together and to respect our various points of view, and to never leave room for hatred or extremism and violence. We have to learn from what happened in the U.S. and make sure that we are respecting each other. We have to work together, bearing in mind that we won't always agree on everything, but we always have to agree on the need to condemn hatred and extremist violence.
Earlier about other countries such as Israel perhaps paying more for vaccines and changing the economic dynamic of all of this. Do these actions undermine Canada's efforts to negotiate fair contracts to purchase these products? And are you considering changing the terms of those contracts or trying to pay more to do what you need to do because the landscape is changing?
I know that Minister Anand will have more to say because she's the one who is in direct contact with the vaccine companies as we work to bring more doses more quickly to Canada. But we have excellent relations with the various vaccine companies, and the way we are demonstrating our ability to deliver for Canadians across the country, this really big vaccination program continues to be a proof point on the fact that we should be continuing to receive more and more doses quickly as we work with companies from around the world. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Merci.
Prime Minister of Canada speaking to Canadians, yes, about COVID and vaccination certainly, but also starting off his remarks with some comments about what has unfolded in the United States over the past couple of days and making it very clear that he believed that assault on democracy